Good morning, everybody. And good morning to those who are watching online around the country and around the world. Thank you for making Crossroads your church home, and welcome to all those in the house. You know, there's a lady by the name of Adrienne Hazlitt, and she and her husband were looking at the Boston Marathon taking place in 2013 when all of a sudden an explosion rocked her world. At first, she thought she was okay as she's laying on the ground, but this is what she said. She said, "I thought we were fine until I looked down and realized that my left foot was practically detached. That's when I started screaming my head off." And the rescue workers took her and her husband to the hospital, and there they were forced to amputate her leg from the knee on down. Now, she used to be a ballroom dancer. She was a ballroom dancer before the accident, and no one would have blamed her if she said, "All right, well, that part of my life is now over." But that's not what she did. She said, "Dancing is my life. Yeah, having my foot blown off, that really sucks. But I can't wallow in woe is me. I can't let some jerk come along and steal my whole life. So I will dance again. And next year, though I've never been a runner, yes, I plan to run the marathon." And doctors fixed her with a prosthetic blade, and she went back to ballroom dancing. And yes, then she started to run for the first time really in her life. And then in 2016, she ran and finished the Boston Marathon. Yeah, amen. She said this: "When I first started learning to use the blade, I made a pact with myself that I would at least try to run. I thought, gosh, this blade is so difficult to use, so I decided to make a challenge that I would overcome." Then she said she's not content to live life as a victim. Said, "I believe a victim is defined by what happened in their life, while a survivor is defined by how they lived their life," she explained. "And I'd like to be defined by how I live my life. That's not to say that I don't recognize what happened. It will forever change me, 100%, she added. "However, I also know that I can and have and will continue to live a long life, and my life is what I make it. I plan on making the most of it, not only for myself, but for other amputees as well." I love her attitude. Isn't that incredible? And because that's the truth in life, and we can live life either as a victim or a victor. We can either give up or we can get up in life. And we're going to be talking, I cannot wait. I'm so excited about this series, and it's the series called Don't Give Up, because that is one thing Satan wants you to do. And perseverance is absolutely one of the strongest things you can ever learn in life, because you're going to need it again and again and again. Because there are times where we feel like giving up in life, isn't there? I mean, there's times that we may feel like giving up in a relationship, maybe in marriage. I don't know of any parent that occasionally doesn't feel like giving up. There's sometimes we may feel like giving up that we'll ever be healthy again. Sometimes we may feel like giving up on a dream, but we all know what it feels like to want to give up. And I'll just be honest with you. There have been dozens and dozens of times where I have felt like giving up as a pastor. There's times where the road is too long, the weight is too heavy to carry, the responsibilities are too great, the problems are too big, the disappointments are too painful. But here's the great thing too about all that is this is a series that's going to be real, it's going to be honest, it's going to be amazingly encouraging. And I say again, you know somebody that needs to hear this. So for those online, share this. For those that are in the house, invite people to be a part of this. Also, throughout the Bible, life and faith is compared to sports. There's times it's compared to boxing. There's times it's compared to wrestling. Time and again, it's compared to running. And there's one verse that has meant an awful lot to me in my life, and it's one that was just read, but I want to say it again. And it says this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, let's throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame. Let us consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that we do not grow weary and lose heart. Another translation says, so we don't give up. We do not know who wrote the book of Hebrews, but we know the audience to which it was written. And it was to people who absolutely were weary and who wanted to give up. And there's so many things that have changed in this world since that time, right? Since that was written. I mean, medicine has changed. Technology is through the roof. Just the world has changed so much. But there's one thing that has never changed from that time to this time, and that there are still people who grow weary in this world, like you and me, and there are people who still feel like giving up from time to time, just like we do. And truthfully, I love the fact that the author doesn't just say, hey, you know what, don't give up. He gives us reasons why not to give up. And then he also tells us what are some ways when we feel like giving up, how to get through that, how to break through. And I want to start with the word that it starts with, that it says, therefore. When I was in seminary, they said anytime you hear the word therefore, you look and go and see what it's there for. And so in this one, it takes you back from chapter 12 of Hebrews to chapter 11 in Hebrews, which is the faith chapter. It's an amazing chapter. It's a chapter where we read about the great men and women of our faith. The people, you have Abraham and Sarah and Moses and I could go on, Joseph, and I could go on and on and on, person after person that we know about. And there's also people that are mentioned that we don't even know their names. We'll never know their names. They're an incredibly diverse group of people. You have young, you have old. You have rich, you have poor. You have male, you have female. But there's two things that they share in common. Number one, they've all gone through junk. But also, none of them have ever given up, even though I bet they felt like it time and time again. Oh, and by the way, if I was to ask you the question, what does David and Moses and Jonah and Elijah all have in common? You could tell me that they were incredible men of faith, and you'd be right. But did you know this about them too? All of those people that I just mentioned were so frustrated, got to such a low point in their life that according to the Bible, each one of them at one time asked God to take their life. I want you to imagine that they got the heroes of our faith that felt like we feel. And that's what I love about the Bible. It's so real. It's so raw. It's so true. It's R-rated at times because they go through the same things we went through. But there's times the heroes of the faith have felt like giving up to the point of saying, God, take my life. And then it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. What in the world does that mean? See, one thing is I don't know whether that's literal or figurative, but the picture is that we are in this coliseum called life. And there's people who have gone before us, the great men and women of our faith, who are now part of our audience, cheering us on. And there are the Abrahams and the Mary, the Peter, Paul, and Mary. Sorry, I had to get that in. That have gone before us. But there's also the men and women of faith that we may never have heard about. The faithful people in other countries and in our country, and even the Billy Grahams and the Mother Teresas and the Dr. Kings and the Wilberforce and things like that. And maybe there's even like your grandma and your grandfather, or maybe a mom or dad or a Sunday school teacher or a pastor or something in your birth, that now they're calling your name and they're cheering you on to go. Now, can you imagine? I want you to picture something. I want you to picture that you are on a field. Maybe it's a football field. Maybe it's a court, okay? And you're there, and you're losing. The score is against you right now. And you feel like giving up. You are bleeding. You are broken. You are exhausted. And all of a sudden, maybe you're on the football field, and you look over, and there's Dick Butkus, or there's John Elway, or there's Joe Montana, or there's Jim Brown, or there's Sweetness, or I could go on and on, Gail Sayers, and you look over and they're saying, come on, give it some more. Give it some more. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this. Or maybe you're on the basketball court, and maybe Wilt's over there, or Jerry West, or Oscar Robertson, or anybody like that, or Magic, or Larry, or anything, and they're saying, come on, I know you feel like quitting. I know you feel like quitting. You keep going. You keep going. I wonder if you dig a little deeper if you saw that, if you heard that. And that's exactly what God is saying is going on. There's people around you right now. There's this, if we could see with spiritual eyes, this great cloud of witnesses and the great heroes of faith and the great people who have gone before us who are cheering, they're calling your name and they're cheering you on to run the best race you can. And don't miss this. Every one of them knows what it feels like to hurt. Every one of those people knows what it feels like to want to give up. Every one of them knows what it feels like to face a giant that's bigger than them. Every one of them knows what it feels like to have an obstacle in front of them that they can't ever go through in their own strength. Every single one of them, but they didn't give up. And I wonder what they'd say to us. I wonder what they'd say to me. I wonder what these heroes of the faith would shout to me. I wonder what they'd shout to you. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes I just need some encouragement. I just need somebody to say, an attaboy. You know, sometimes I need somebody just to remind me that things are going good, in the areas that are going good. Sometimes I need to be reminded of the promises of God, just like we heard up here in the dramatization. Sometimes I just need a friend, right? And maybe sometimes we need to hear something that we may not want to hear. Something like, all right, come on. I know you want to quit. I know you want to just sit on the bench and everything. Your team needs you. Your team needs you. So what you need to do, put on the big boy pants, put on the big girl pants, and get back in the game because your team needs you. And then I thought too is I love my favorite race that I would ever do was the Boulder. It was in Boulder, Colorado. It was one of the early first huge races. There'd be over 20,000 people, which now in runs that's not that big. Back then it was pretty big. And I remember running this race. It was a 10-kilometer run, and I want to take you to the finish line, towards the finish, because there's this big, long, steep hill. And remember, you're running at altitude in Colorado there, and you feel like, you know, your legs are like jello. You just feel like giving up. Your lungs are on fire, and then it happens. You hear the crowd. Because what you're about to do is you're about to run into Folsom Stadium where there's about 30,000 screaming people waiting for you to run in there. And it was incredible when you did this. For one thing, you had not only this 30,000, but you had some of the greatest runners in the world there. One of them was Frank Shorter, who lived in Boulder, and he was the 1972 Olympic medalist, gold medalist for the United States in the marathon. And he'd be at the ending cheering you on and everything. And then I'll tell you, it did something for you when you ran into that crowd of witnesses. People who were running like this the whole time, barely moving, all of a sudden they became an Olympic athlete, right? They were sprinting to the finish line. People who had felt like they could not go another step, suddenly they got a second wind. And maybe that's what we need to feel is when we feel like giving up, to just remember the people who are watching right now all around us, cheering us on. You know, there's a person by the name of Clay Dalrymple. He was a baseball player for the Philadelphia Phillies in 1964. The Phillies in that day, that year, were infamous because they had this huge lead and they lost the lead, losing the last 10 games of the season. But there's something amazing that happened, not in a game, but after a game in that season. This man came down, he was a pitcher for them, and he heard that there was a young lady who was blind who wanted to walk the bases. So he took her by the hand, and she got down, and she started to feel home base. And then he took her to first base, he took her to second, he took her to third, and then he came back, and she once again touched home base. Well, all of a sudden, he looks, there's this thunderous applause, and he didn't realize that almost nobody had left the stadium. Everybody had watched what was happening here and gave them a standing ovation. He said it was the biggest ovation he ever had. And what he didn't realize is there were people watching even when he didn't know they were watching. And understand, for every single one of us, there are people watching us even when we don't know that they're watching us. For any parent, you know something. There's at least two little eyes that are always watching you. Wondering what it means to be a man or woman of God, wondering how men or women of God handle rough situations, when they face obstacles that are big for them, when they want to quit, when they don't feel like enduring, when they don't feel like persevering. What do? There's kids that are always going to be watching us, parents, but also people you go to school with, people you work with. They're wondering how a Christian handles this. They may not be a Christian, but they're looking how you handle adversity. And maybe they're a Christian, but they're just watching you could encourage them in that. And that does not mean, the word for witness, you know what it means? In the Greek, it is martyr. And that's where we get the word martyr. We witness on how we go through difficulty in our life. We witness in that. And so something that we need to understand, though, is that doesn't mean that we don't hurt. That doesn't mean that we put on a fake smile. That doesn't mean that we can't cry. That doesn't mean that we can't go, man, I'm struggling right now. What it means is this. What it means is that we keep going even though we don't feel like going on. That we keep believing even when we don't feel like believing. That's what it means. There's always people watching. And then he says this, therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let's throw off everything that hinders us. The word hinder, it literally means a weight. And what it's saying is and one translation says this. Well, it's saying the weight is saying, let us throw off everything that weighs us down. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to identify our baggage, right? If you go to an airplane, get off the airplane, you need to identify your baggage. If we're going to know what our hindrances are, first we need to, or throw them off, we need to know what they are. And when you go there, you identify your baggage, don't you? You don't identify somebody else's baggage. And it's so easy to identify everybody else's weights and hindrances, right? Their problems. It's much harder to identify our own because we're too involved in it. But what we need to do is not only once we identify it, we need to throw off that weight. We need to not hold that. And something else there too is this, that hindrances are different from sins. Because it goes on he talks about hindrances first and then sins. And so they can't be the same thing. And a sin is always wrong. It's always bad. But a hindrance, a weight that we carry, doesn't have to be bad. It can be something completely neutral or something else. It can even be a good thing that keeps us from the best things. What's some things that weigh you down from running the race that you need to run? Because there's one word that it says here. It says throw off everything that hinders. And you know, there was Frank Shorter, that runner that I was talking about. He was one time interviewed in the newspaper and said, they asked him a question, why do you not run with any socks? And he said, because my socks weigh 3 tons. And I thought, man, you need to get them at Walmart where I get them, man. Those are heavy socks. I don't have no 3-ton socks. But here's what it was. We know what he's talking about, right? That even just a few ounces here and there added up over 26.2 miles adds up to 3 tons. I don't know if you know this, but in the original Greek games, the guys ran stark naked. That's the bare facts. Sorry. That's very revealing. But anyway, I don't know about you, but if I'm running in that race, I will do everything in my power to be in the front of that race. I would not want to be behind anybody in that race, right? I would give an incredible incentive for that. But he's saying, man, we need to go spiritually streaking. There's nothing. What is it in our life that is keeping us from running the race that God wants us to run? And the other word is this. It says to throw off. And what that means is this. It means to literally throw it off, but put it in a way that we can't even get to it anymore. That's the picture that it's talking about. And understand this. A weight doesn't have to be something super, super heavy to weigh us down, does it? Over time. I remember one time in a spin class that I was at with an amazing woman of God that I loved so much. That used to come to the church, and she's gone on to be with Jesus now. But she said, all right, I want you guys to go in and get some weights first, because we're going to be doing arms as we do that. So the ladies went in, and almost all of them grabbed a pink weight. It was the lightest weight they had. And the testosterone inside each one of us guys did not allow us to get the pink weight. I don't care. It could have been any other color, and we'd have probably maybe grabbed that. So we grabbed a slightly heavier weight, but it was not that heavy a weight. It was like 3 to 5 pounds. That's it. But what she did not tell us is we're going to be lifting that thing about the same time as a presidential administration, right? I mean, we did this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And what I found out is you can get more tired and more worn out and more weighed down by doing a little weight hundreds of times or thousands of times more than you can from doing a heavy weight a few times. It may be a little weight. It seems like a little weight, but it can hold us down. And here's something that I asked you what your weights are. And here's what you said. And here's what I want you to know, that what you'll see is some of these weights are heavy and some of these weights are light. And here's what you said. Difficult experiences from my past, untruths I believed about myself, fear, a heart hardened by hurt, fear, anxiety, doubt, feelings of inadequacy. Another person said, my own unreasonable or unmet expectations. Someone else said, fears and concerns over the future when there is so much misinformation. Schedules being too busy. I cram too much into my schedule. Trauma and unforgiveness. The fear of not being good enough. Now, I don't know if you noticed how many of those things mentioned fear, worry, and anxiety. It seems to be a big weight that we all carry. And I remember, and most of the time you think about it, something that weighs us down and makes us anxious is when things are out of our control, aren't they? I remember one time when, I love to do adventurous stuff. I've jumped out of airplanes several times. I have faced animals in other countries. I've lions and bears in this country and rhinos and things. I've preached in front of tens of thousands of people. One time I preached in front of 170,000 people at one time, and I was nervous especially on those occasions. But the thing that has probably scared me at least some of the most in my entire life is teaching my daughters how to drive. Can anybody relate to that? Holy smoke, man. It was terrifying for me. Now, my girls are amazing. They're wonderful. They're intelligent. They're great, great ladies. But let me how to put this. When it came to driving at the start, they, stunk. That's what it was. I remember one time even, coming up to teaching one of my daughters, and we're headed towards a red light. And I said, slow down. Slow down, slow down. And finally, I don't yell very much, but I yelled, stop. And I looked at her and said, what are you doing? And she said, it was yellow. Not yellow, orange, sorry, it was orange. And I said, okay, where is that on the light and what does it mean? Well, it looks orange. And I'm saying, I tell you, there were almost claw marks from where I didn't have a steering wheel and had to hold on to something. There's almost holes in the floor because I'm trying to put a brake on a brake that doesn't exist there. It's the thing about things that are going on in our world right now, about Ukraine and about Putin and all that. But something that I want us to know that as we face that concern, that worry, whatever the other ones that you face right now, that you may not be in control. I am not in control of that. I can't affect that except for by praying for it. But one thing is, I know there's a God who can control that, who is in control. God is in control even when I'm not, even when I don't understand, even when things seem to be out of control. God's an incredible driver. He's never wrecked and he's never going to wreck. And so we can trust in him completely and fully. The word says this, that says that we are to cast all our anxiety upon him because he cares for us. Now think of that. First, it says all, once again, all, every, that we're supposed to. And it says anxiety, not anxieties, so it's one big lump. But a lot of times when we hear the word cast, we think of a fisherman who casts the net, right? That's not the word that is used here. The word that is used here is to transfer weight from one person to another. It's like if you had a 50-pound bag of cement and you're saying, you're doing this and you're handing it to somebody else. That's the picture that God is wanting us to know, that's what we can do with him. There was one time I was on a mission field and there was a man and his little boy that picked me up. And this is when the suitcases could weigh 70 pounds and mine weighed 70 pounds. And I remember this little boy saying, hey, can I carry this for you? And I'm thinking, okay, give it a shot. And he grabs like this, tries to pick it up, and immediately falls over. And my suitcase went right into this big mud puddle. And he looks up, and the poor little guy's terrified, like I'm going to kill him or something. And I looked at him, I said, that is okay, man. Thank you so much for trying. Would you mind if I take it now? Would it be okay if I took it? Now, that little boy had an option. Things, or we can give the weight and say, yeah, you're bigger and you're stronger. You take it. Maybe that's a conversation you need to have with God. Maybe there's a weight that you're carrying right now. And it's a weight that's too big for you. It's too big for you to carry, especially the weight of the world right now. It's a pretty big one that we try to carry. And saying, God, it's too big for me, but it's not too big for you. A relationship, it's too big for me. It's not too big for you. It's too big for me. It's not too big for you. Because there's not a weight that our God can't carry. And here's the obstacle, something we have to think about with this verse is this, that we can't do the second part of that verse about casting all our anxiety, or the first part about cast all our anxiety upon him, unless we truly believe that he cares for us. If we don't believe that he cares for us and really has our best interests in mind and is everything he says he is, then we're going to be very reluctant to cast our anxiety upon him. But if we really, really believe that God loves us and cares about us, he truly cares for every aspect of your life. Here's the weight that I'm carrying. It says, so here's the challenge, that we identify what's causing the anxiety. We believe that God truly cares for us, and we say, God, we transfer the weight and say, God, it's too much for me, but it's not too much for you. And the third thing is we need to not get tripped up. Throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. I want to think of just three athletes that I was picturing here. The first one is Mary Decker. Mary Decker was the 84 representing the United States. She was the world record holder in this event. She was supposed to win hands down. But just at the part in the race, her feet got tied up with a young South African athlete by the name of Zola Budd. And I'll never forget as Mary Decker fell to the infield, and she's there and crying and screaming, and she did not get back up. She could not get back up. And just watching that was one of the most painful things I've ever seen in sports. And understand this, that Satan, that's the thing that Satan wants to do to you. And what Zola did accidentally, God intentionally wants to trip you up. That's his goal. That's why he gives temptation. That's why he offers you sin, because he wants to trip you up. He wants you to get on the infield and just sit there and stay there and lick your wounds and never get free from that. The other person is Gail Devers, and Gail Devers was an amazing young lady who was phenomenal in the hurdles. And I still remember as she's running and she's way ahead and I'm cheering her on with everything I've got. And all of a sudden on the last hurdle, she's so far ahead, and on the last hurdle, she trips and falls, and she almost like crawls across the finish line and does not finish first. She's way back. I don't even know if she was finished in the top at all. But I remember she's off the podium, and I hurt so bad for her too. But here's the thing that I learned that day, is Satan does not care whether he trips you on the first hurdle or the 10th hurdle or the 110th hurdle, as long as he can trip you up. The other picture is the person is Eric Liddell. If you've ever seen the movie Chariots of Fire, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, it's a true story about his life. And he won the 400 in the I believe 1924 Olympics. And there's a picture that's in this movie that actually happened to him. And he was running a race, and somebody knocked him into the infield, and he fell. And if you've ever seen the movie, there's this man that says, "Get up, laddie, get up." And just this look in his eyes, and he gets up, and then he starts running the race again. And not only does he finish the race, but he wins the race. And I think that's what God would say to us. There are going to be times we are going to hit the infield, y'all. There's going to be times we blow it. There's going to be times where we fail. There's going to be times that we want to give up, and we're there, and we want to just lick our wounds and stay on the infield. And God's saying, laddie, lassie, get up, and finish the race. In a moment, there's going to be some people here who want to pray for you. And maybe right now the altar is open for all of us that may be going through some time right now, and you may feel like giving up. But I remember I thought of something that happened a few weeks ago when Michael Jordan showed up to a Carolina basketball game. And the athletes talked about how just looking over there and seeing him made all the difference. And this one guy said, we caught eyes, and it did something for me. And I don't know whether anybody else, I believe there's that great cloud of witnesses. But one person I guarantee you is standing in your behalf and standing and cheering you on. You can recognize him because he's the one with the nail scars in his hand, cheering you on and saying, don't give up, don't give up. You keep going, never, ever give up.